Daddy, it's Mommy. Those two simple words, spoken by 5-year-old Lily in the middle of a crowded mall on Christmas Eve, sent a jolt through Mark's entire body. He froze, shopping bags dangling from his fingers, as he followed his daughter's pointing finger to the woman standing just 20 feet away, the woman he hadn't seen in nearly 3 years. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming content that reminds us all about the power of forgiveness and second chances, especially during the holiday season. Mark never expected to see Sarah again, not after she'd walked out of their lives when Lily was barely 2 years old. The divorce papers had arrived a month later, and just like that, Mark became a single father, navigating the challenges of raising a little girl on his own while nursing a broken heart that never quite seemed to heal. The mall was packed with last-minute shoppers, Christmas music blaring from overhead speakers, and colorful decorations hanging from every available surface. Mark had promised Lily they would find the perfect gift for her grandmother before heading to his parents' house for their annual Christmas Eve dinner. It was supposed to be a quick trip, in and out, before the worst of the holiday crowds descended. Daddy, look! It's Mommy! Lily tugged at his hand insistently, her eyes wide with excitement and confusion. Can we go say hi? Please? Mark felt his throat tighten. How did Lily even recognize Sarah? She'd been so young when Sarah left. The only way Lily knew what her mother looked like was from the few photographs Mark had kept, unable to completely erase Sarah from their lives despite the pain she'd caused. Lily, I don't think, Mark began, but Lily had already broken free from his grip and was darting through the crowd toward the woman who had given birth to her and then abandoned her without a backward glance. Mommy! Lily called out, her voice somehow carrying over the Christmas music and the buzz of conversation. Mark watched as Sarah turned, her expression shifting from confusion to shock as she recognized the little girl running toward her. For a moment, Mark thought she might turn and flee, but instead, she knelt down, her shopping bags dropping to the floor beside her. Time seemed to slow as Mark pushed through the crowd, his heart hammering in his chest. What was Sarah doing back in town? Why now, after all this time? And what was he supposed to say to the woman who had shattered his world and left him to pick up the pieces? Sarah looked up as Mark approached, her eyes filling with tears. She looked different, her hair was shorter, and there was a weariness in her face that hadn't been there before. But her eyes were the same, those deep brown eyes that had once made his heart skip a beat. Mark, she said softly, still holding Lily who had wrapped her arms around Sarah's neck. I didn't expect to see you here. That makes 2 of us, Mark replied, his voice steadier than he felt. Lily, come here, please. But Lily clung tighter to Sarah. Daddy, it's Mommy. She came back for Christmas. The simplicity of Lily's statement hit Mark like a physical blow. In Lily's young mind, this chance encounter was no accident. It was her mother returning for the holidays, just as she had secretly wished for when she blew out the candles on her birthday cake 2 months earlier. I'm just in town visiting my parents, Sarah explained, gently disentangling herself from Lily's embrace but keeping hold of the little girl's hand. I didn't know if I should reach out. Mark wanted to be angry. He wanted to grab Lily and walk away, to protect his daughter from the inevitable pain when Sarah disappeared from their lives again. But the look on Lily's face, pure joy mixed with wonder, made him hesitate. You've grown so much, Sarah said to Lily, her voice catching. You look just like your daddy. I'm 5 now, Lily announced proudly. And I lost a tooth. See? She opened her mouth wide to display the gap where her bottom front tooth had been. Sarah laughed, a sound that brought back a flood of memories Mark had tried so hard to suppress. That's amazing, sweetheart. An awkward silence fell between the adults as shoppers streamed around them, oblivious to the emotional reunion taking place in their midst. We should go, Mark finally said, reaching for Lily's hand. My parents are expecting us for dinner. Oh, Sarah nodded, disappointment flashing across her face. Of course. Lily looked between her parents, her brow furrowing. "Can Mommy come too? Please, Daddy? It's Christmas." Mark opened his mouth to say no, to explain that things were complicated, that Sarah couldn't just walk back into their lives after 3 years of silence. But before he could speak, Lily said 2 words that changed everything. "Forgive her." Mark stared at his daughter in disbelief. Those weren't just any words, they were the exact words his own mother had spoken to him countless times over the past 3 years whenever he expressed his anger and hurt over Sarah's abandonment. "Forgiveness isn't for them, Mark. It's for you." Had Lily been listening all this time? Had she understood more than he'd given her credit for? Sarah's eyes filled with fresh tears. "Mark, I know I don't deserve. Why did you leave?" Mark interrupted, the question he'd wanted to ask for 3 years finally escaping his lips. Sarah glanced around at the crowded mall. "I don't think this is the place." "No, it's not," Mark agreed. He took a deep breath, looking down at Lily who was watching them both with hopeful eyes. "But my parents' house might be. If you want to join us, that is." The invitation surprised even him. What was he thinking? His parents would be shocked, his father might even refuse to let Sarah through the door after what she'd done. But something about the season, about Lily's innocent plea for forgiveness, made Mark willing to at least hear Sarah out. "Are you sure?" Sarah asked, clearly stunned by the offer. "No," Mark admitted honestly. "But it's Christmas Eve, and Lily wants you there. That's enough for now." The drive to Mark's parents' house was tense, filled with Lily's excited chatter from the back seat while Mark and Sarah sat in uncomfortable silence. Sarah had followed them in her own car, giving Mark time to call ahead and warn his parents about their unexpected guest. As they pulled into the driveway of the modest suburban home where Mark had grown up, he turned to Sarah. "Before we go in, I need to know one thing. Are you just passing through, or are you planning to stay around this time?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "I moved back to town last week. For good. I got a job at the hospital. I was going to call after the holidays, to see if I could be part of Lily's life again. I know I don't deserve it, but I've changed, Mark. I've been in therapy for 2 years, dealing with the postpartum depression that I never acknowledged, the anxiety that made me feel like I was drowning every day. I'm not making excuses, but I'm not the same person who left." Mark absorbed this information silently. Postpartum depression. He'd suspected it at the time, had tried to get Sarah to see someone, but she'd refused, insisting she was fine until the day she packed her bags and walked out. "We'll talk more later," he finally said. "For now, let's just get through dinner." Mark's mother opened the door before they could knock, her eyes widening at the sight of Sarah standing behind Mark and Lily. To her credit, she recovered quickly, pulling Lily into a hug before straightening to face her former daughter-in-law. "Sarah," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "This is a surprise." "I'm sorry to intrude, Mrs. Collins," Sarah replied. "Mark was kind enough to invite me when we ran into each other at the mall." "Grandma!" Lily exclaimed, tugging on her grandmother's sweater. "Mommy came back for Christmas. Isn't that the best present ever?" Mark watched his mother's expression soften as she looked down at Lily's excited face. "Well, why don't you all come in out of the cold? Dinner's almost ready." The next few hours were surreal. Mark's father was less welcoming than his mother, giving Sarah a curt nod before retreating to his armchair with a glass of eggnog. But as the evening progressed, the initial tension began to ease, helped along by Lily's infectious excitement and the general spirit of the holiday. After dinner, while Lily was showing her grandparents the Christmas list she'd written for Santa, Mark and Sarah stepped onto the back porch for some privacy. "Thank you for this," Sarah said, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold. "I know it couldn't have been easy to invite me." "It wasn't," Mark admitted. "But seeing how happy it made Lily, I couldn't say no." Sarah nodded, looking out at the snow-covered backyard. She's amazing, Mark. You've done such a wonderful job with her. I had to, Mark replied simply. She needed at least one parent she could count on. Sarah flinched at his words but didn't argue. I deserve that. I deserve all your anger and resentment. What I did was unforgivable. And yet Lily wants me to forgive you, Mark said with a humorless laugh. Out of the mouths of babes, right? She's wiser than both of us, Sarah agreed. Mark, I know I have no right to ask this, but I want to be part of Lily's life again. I want to try to make up for the time I've lost, if that's even possible. I'm not asking for us to get back together or for you to trust me right away. I just want a chance to be her mother again. Mark was quiet for a long moment, watching his breath form clouds in the cold air. When you left, I had to explain to a 2-year-old why her mommy wasn't coming home. Do you have any idea how impossible that was? How do you tell a toddler that her mother chose to leave her? I didn't choose to leave her, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. I was sick, Mark. I couldn't see clearly. I convinced myself that you both would be better off without me, that I was a terrible mother who would only damage Lily if I stayed. It wasn't rational, but mental illness rarely is. Mark had spent 3 years building walls around his heart, protecting himself from the pain Sarah had caused. But standing there on Christmas Eve, watching the mother of his child cry for all she had lost, he felt those walls beginning to crack. I'm not saying I forgive you, he said finally. But Lily deserves to have her mother in her life, if that's what you truly want. We can start slow, supervised visits, maybe once a week. We'll see how it goes from there. Sarah looked up at him, hope dawning in her eyes. Really? You'd give me that chance? It's not about you or me anymore, Mark said. It's about what's best for Lily. And having both parents in her life, if possible, is what's best for her. Before Sarah could respond, the back door opened, and Lily poked her head out. Daddy? Grandma says it's time for hot chocolate and Christmas stories. Can Mommy stay for that too? Mark looked at his daughter's hopeful face, then at Sarah who was hastily wiping away her tears. Yes, sweetheart. Mommy can stay for stories. Lily's face lit up with a smile that made all the pain and uncertainty worth it. This is the best Christmas ever, she declared before disappearing back inside. As they followed Lily into the warm house, Sarah touched Mark's arm lightly. Thank you, she said simply. Mark nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He didn't know what the future held for them, whether Sarah would prove herself trustworthy, whether he could ever truly forgive her, or whether they might someday find their way back to each other. But for tonight, on Christmas Eve, he was willing to set aside the past and focus on giving Lily the gift she wanted most, her family together again. As they settled in the living room, Lily squeezed between Mark and Sarah on the couch, her small hand reaching out to hold both of theirs. And in that moment, as his mother began to read, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," Mark realized that sometimes the greatest gifts come in the most unexpected ways. Those two simple words, "Forgive her," spoken by a child who understood the true meaning of Christmas better than any adult, had opened the door to healing that Mark had kept firmly shut for 3 long years. And while forgiveness wouldn't come easily or quickly, the journey had begun with a chance encounter in a crowded mall and the wisdom of a 5-year-old girl who still believed in Christmas miracles. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content that celebrates the power of forgiveness, family, and the special magic that only seems possible during the holiday season. Sometimes the greatest gifts can't be wrapped and placed under a tree, they come in moments of grace when we least expect them, changing our lives forever with just 2 simple words.